Hey you, welcome back to the channel. And of course, with Euron staring up in the clouds, uh, season 8, episode 5, we knew what happened next. So I've had to change the title of the video. This is now the Game of Thrones season 8 Apologetics, where I'm going to do my best to try to tell you why this episode was so great, which I really do think it was great. And I thought the last episode was great too. I thought these were the best episodes. I said episode 4 was the best. I'm gonna tell you why season episode 5 rather was really good. So we're gonna talk about that a little bit. Now, of course, this is gonna be spoilers if you haven't seen the episode yet. You know, that problem means you're not a Game of Thrones fan anyway. But but if you haven't seen the episode yet, then come back after you're watching and we can talk about it. But so let's talk about what's been some of the problems that people are seeing with Game of Thrones, and I'm going to try to explain them away. So, you know, one of the first main issues that I think came up in the episode that some people had a problem with was the death of Varys. Now, of course, we know both between Varys and Littlefinger, they had some of the best dialogue in the entire series, right? And these were, when you think about playing the Game of Thrones, I don't think you could have thought of better players than Varys and Littlefinger. And of course, Littlefinger had this very disappointing death. You know, so much went into his character, the way he was killed. A lot of people weren't very happy about that. Similar things seems to happen with Varys, right? And kind of interesting, though. Kind of interesting. You know, thinking about Varys, how they were, you know, how in the show we were kind of led to believe that he was kind of like, you know, a little bit kind of on the cowardly side, or he wasn't. But he went to his death, you know, with some honor there, didn't he? But anyway, you know, the death of Varys, I mean, for the people who had a problem with that, I mean, what could have been a more fitting death, right, than to be killed by fire by a dragon, right? How many people could say they were killed by a dragon? So, so anyway, but in all seriousness, yeah, the episode with Varys, of course, Varys has been, them taking him out quick with everything what was going on. I thought it just made perfect sense in the writing and episodes, because if you think about the history of Varys, Varys had already been warned about betrayal, and Daenerys kept true to her word. There was no reason to stall his death any longer. He had already crossed the line and betrayed Daenerys, with trying to unseat her from the throne. You know, of course, someone like Varys is very dangerous, right? He's the master. He's been the master of whispers for several kings now. And, you know, he seemingly, you know, at least it seemed from our perspective that Varys was just kind of this person who would serve any king to save his neck. But, you know, we got to find out over the years that Varys was really trying to look out for the little guy, right? He was trying to serve the realm. But how they killed Varys, I didn't really see a big problem with that, although Varys was one of my most favorite characters. But he was pretty sloppy at the end, though, wasn't he? Like, you know, with the letters. And so I guess some people would say that's kind of bad writing. But I think it was still becoming, it was going to be obvious anyway, because he had basically confided in Tyrion to try to help him, you know, with replacing Daenerys. And that wasn't out of writing at all, I don't think, because you know, Varys and Tyrion since season 2 have been pretty darn close, right? And so that seemed very much in character. Now, of course, Tyrion went and gave that information over to Daenerys, you know, because he didn't want her to, you know, be replaced in that way. And hopefully that will serve him in the upcoming episodes, because if he's put his neck on the line already by freeing Jamie, of course. But I thought that was fine. So I didn't really have a problem with that. Let's see. Let's move on to something else people had a great deal of issue with. The Golden Company. The Golden Company. So, ever so often Game of Thrones does this thing where they'll set up this big deal about something, and, 15, 20, 30 seconds, they're over with and done with. And that's what happened to the Golden Company. They couldn't even get a chance to land one sword fight or spear in, because they were destroyed by the heat from Drogon's fire. It was an interesting setup, but I mean, with the history of what the dragons have done, the Field of Fire, attacking from an aerial view, from the air, the way Drogon did, and coming up from behind him. I mean, if you're an army ready to fight, and a force like that comes up from behind you, it's not a whole lot you can entirely do. And they would be vulnerable in a case like that. And I actually skipped over the Euron naval battle, which is the same thing. Drogon comes out the sky and the Scorpions can't, aim at him. But, it kind of makes sense a little bit too, because you imagine how the speed at which animals in flight are moving, and Drogon is very maneuverable. I mean, you think about how maneuverable Drogon is. The Night King couldn't even hit Drogon. The Night King, I would imagine this is a supernatural creature where he probably has an aim out of this world, and he's throwing at Drogon. Drogon's doing acrobatics in the air, and the Night King can't hit Drogon, right? There's no telling how fast he's throwing that spear. And so, with all the maneuvering, it's hard to hit a moving target. You also got to think about these people who are manning these scorpions. This is a new invention. It's not like all of them would be experts and you're telling them to turn them around and and this dragon's moving at 100 miles per hour or something, flying. And again, Drogon being very acrobatic, he's doing all kind of stuff. He's flying at ship level where they can't even, And hey, so that's what happened with that. I don't think that some people say that the Scorpions were knocking dragons out of the air, like it was no problem. Well, they hit Rhaegal, but the thing is, we can I guess you can kind of look at it like, okay, well, Rhaegal was hit by the Scorpion, but Rhaegal had holes in his wings. He could barely, it don't tell how slow he was flying. They probably just keeping the pace with Rhaegal. And now, truth be told, I would have liked if they would have just confirmed it was Varys who had set that up, so the ambush looked a great deal better. But I can live with how they took out Rhaegal in those type situations. So I was fine with all of that. Okay, I guess the next problem in the episode was that Daenerys was they didn't like how quick she became the Mad Queen, right? They said, well, her character was different from that. But hey, now there's a few things we have to consider about the Mad King and Targaryens. First, their madness and mental illness could be genetic, right? Which means that Daenerys was going to inherit that anyway from him. Maybe that's all was needed was a break, a snap, right? And then Daenerys did lose a great deal, right? She said those dragons were like her children, so she lost 2 of those on this expedition with Jon Snow. She lost her best friend, which, I mean, one can assume, we don't really know how close these 2 were. She was the only, most people had betrayed Dany, like she said. So there was only a few people who didn't, or who probably would never. And that probably was Missandei and Grey Worm, because we're seeing what's happening with the rest of the Westerosi. They're gonna betray her when they, every avenue they get. So maybe she realized that and she just snapped. But also, with something like what would be this, if you want to, call it this breakdown of Daenerys, it's kind of hard to predict. There's not necessarily a time frame with these type things, right? So in the episode, yeah, it looks like she all of a sudden just went, oh, and now I'm the Mad Queen, and then lead up, and there was no lead. But this is a genetic thing in the Targaryen line, so we don't really know how fast or slow that works. um, some people didn't like just the shots of the dragon fires, how he just kept burning up the city. I guess I kind of already touched on Daenerys' decision to just to burn the people. Some people felt that was out of her character too. Even if you kind of consider the madness. So let me expound on that just a little bit more. When Daenerys fought in the North for the North, my thoughts on that, or I guess maybe one way you could probably look at it is you could look at it like Dany. After she had sacrificed so much and she still didn't have the admiration of the North, they were still kind of walking around like, they didn't want anything to do with her. Like, that you helped us, you can get up and just go. And they didn't seem very gracious about her sacrifice so much to save their lives in the North, right? They didn't really still see her as queen. They were still trying to put a Northern king, over her, which really didn't make a whole lot of sense, seeing that the person who saved you was the person who, even if the North wanted to blame the Targaryens for the centuries of devastation that they've done to the North, or one way or the other, the Targaryens still had nothing to do with the threat of the White Walkers, right? As far as we know, unless they're White Walkers themselves. But as far as we know, that the North, that was something that was going to hit them first and be devastating and wipe them out. And so Daenerys saves them. So, I guess what I'm trying to say is maybe Daenerys just got to a point with it where everybody betrays her. The country is not loyal to her. And every chance they get, they turn on her, right? And they're plotting to do it now. And maybe when she got to King's Landing, she saw those people as going to be pretty much the same thing. Because if you go back to her scene with Jon Snow, where he wasn't returning her affections, and she went on to say something to the effect of, well, it's going to be fear then, because love's not working, so maybe it's fear that I'm going to have to use. What she did in King's Landing seemed parallel to that, right? I think she just reached a conclusion where it's going to take fear to keep these people from betraying me, from rising up against me, because as soon as they get the opportunity, which they would, that's what they're going to do. They're going to try to do it anyway, but maybe she already foresaw they were going to do that. They're going to rise up against her, the countryside. Now, obviously, it's out of rules of war, what she did. Well, I guess it's not out of the rules of their war, but it would be traditionally. Even in the apologetics video, that's hard. That part's hard to apologize for. But yeah, just from her thought process with that, I guess it would be in line with her writing. And the point I'm trying to make is people say it was all of a sudden. But no, not really, because the episode does touch on it. She is in that place now where she believes fear is going to be the only way to keep these people at bay. Maybe not the best way to rule, but it was kind of in relation to where she was going with that. The destruction of some people liked it. I thought it was fair. I thought it was fine. Some people thought it dragged on too long, but maybe they want to kind of give you this 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 entire scene of what happens in war, the devastation of war. And oddly enough, the things I thought about is like how all these countries go into these armies go into these countries of people, and you think about all the collateral damage and the damage to civilians that is done, right? Some of which is accidental and some on purpose, but the fact that the innocent suffer, that seemed to be what they were trying to push out there. And I just thought about how in real wars that kind of thing happens, right? Um, and so some people didn't like those scenes. I thought they were okay. I didn't really have a problem with them. And then of course Arya getting the head of the Golden Company's his horse. Getting I forget his name, is it Strickland, Harry Strickland or something like that, getting his horse. I thought that was just it was some symbolism there. I didn't really take that serious. Maybe I ought to just look at that as symbolism. Yeah, she got on a horse and rode away, but that was part of the art of the set and the design and all those things. Uh, was there any problem with Clegane Bowl? Did somebody have any problem? I think for the most part everybody was all right with Clegane Bowl. I thought Clegane Bowl was awesome. I thought it was great. I think somebody complained that they was trying to do the mountain type thing. I'm sorry, the when the mountain went against Oberyn Martell, the Sand Snake, the Viper, right, the Red Viper. Um, that he tried to take gouge out his eyes or whatnot, make his head explode. And I like that too. I didn't have a problem with that. Clegane was able to, Sandor was able to, Hound was able to still be able to see out of one eye just long enough to try to. Although I thought it was pretty much the end for him at that point. I was wondering how he was going to fight, what he's going to do with him. But I thought that was all. I thought that was all fine in that scene. Some people complained about Jon Snow just kind of being along for the ride and things getting out of control. I didn't really see a problem with that. I thought that was kind of realistic. That hey, even a hero can get kind of sucked up in a situation sometimes, and it's kind of divided on where he stands. He has declared his loyalty to Daenerys, and remember, these are Starks; they're people of honor, right? He's declared that he knows the sacrifices she's made. Um, and that was a decision he made, that he's trying to find his way out of it, and we'll see if he does or not. But I thought it kind of all worked well. Cersei and the Valonqar, some people are kind of upset about that prophecy with Cersei and how her and Jaime died. Um, and I thought it kind of fulfilled the prophecy though, because it died at the hands of the valley. She was kind of at his hands, or hand, and so they died that way. So I thought that was close enough to fulfill the prophecy. Also, remember, these prophecies aren't supposed to be that accurate in every case. Maggie the Frog's prophecies have been spot on. Melisandre was the one who was off a lot. But Maggie the Frog, I don't know where she was getting her information from, but I thought her prophecies were pretty much spot on. And who else did we miss? People had a problem with the Euron. I skipped over the Euron and Jaime fight because Jaime took all the wounds, and they thought Jaime, should have died. Well, there. I could say that's based on adrenaline though, right? Adrenaline. Let's say it's adrenaline and drive, just sheer willpower. Of course, that's not to say he wasn't going to die a few minutes later. He wasn't going to survive that per se, but he had enough in him to still get to her. His love kept him going. His adrenaline kept him going. He had to do it. And the Euron, it was funny. It was kind of, this Euron guy, he was the comic relief. Okay. It was, up until the end, Euron was the comic relief, and I'm going to be honest and say I really enjoyed Euron being a comic relief. Although, you know, as far as a realistic fight goes, that would be a crazy fight, a realistic fight. So I'm going to say it's the comic relief, which you need a little bit of comic relief and stuff when it's too serious. Tyrion's usually that, but Tyrion's scene with Jaime, or was just a great, awesome scene with Jaime Lannister. As he said, Jaime was the only person he had, and he was returning to Jaime what Jaime had done for him all his life. Looked out for him. And I just thought that was an amazing scene. That was an amazing scene. Like, for a lot of people who say Peter Dinklage didn't do a good, it's become this not so clever character now, and he's doing all this crazy stuff, and people don't like it. I thought that scene was awesome. So a lot of people are just upset about what's happening with Game of Thrones. Some are upset because it's not going according to the books, and they've said in the beginning that the books were something totally different from the television show. And then, George R. Martin, don't tell him what he's going to write in those books now, but, so they're definitely going to diverge a lot, I think, now, and that's going to be interesting, right? But tell me what you think, guys. Do you kind of share my ideas about what happened? Does that make you feel any better about the episode, or are you still like, this is really just, they really just trashed Game of Thrones. This is the end of the road for it. But anyway, tell me all what you think, guys. And until next time, take care.